Hello everybody, I'm Max Gaudion. I've been asked to show you how to make crab pots. I'm probably one of the last people here in the island making them, although one or two are learning because I've done a couple of courses last year teaching a few new people. Whether they'll carry it on or not, I don't know. Basically, to take those that watch this that are used to making pots, you needn't watch this bit, but for any beginners that don't, I'll just go through the basics of it to start with. My tools are simply a metal marlin splice, which is very important to me. I can't find these now. It's an antique model. It's wonderful. Pear secateurs, knife, and the fid, which I only use generally at the very end to help me put the bottom in. So I can do you a quick, here's one I made earlier type shot. Basically, you start with a mould, a plate, a disc, call it what you like, and I don't use a stand like many other places. I just use a leg, a peg that goes in the bottom. So when we've started work, that goes in like that, and all the willow is bent back and tied to the cords, and I actually work with it in that position with the pot. So just to show you a couple of samples, first I don't use the new mould. I've still got my original that there's a few big screws in it holding the cracks together, and it still works. I'm now 75 years old, and I think this is probably about twice as old. But it's a piece of Guernsey elm. Even the fly has passed on and died in it. It's full of holes, but I like using that bit. It reminds me of the old people. So basically, to start, all the ribs, or a few ribs, are put in whichever size ring of holes you want to make the pot. And I actually made these up for Chelsea Flower Show a few years back when they did for Raymond Everson locally with the Guernsey clematis. He puts in a big clematis display every year, and he did a Guernsey beach scene. So I started some pots like this. I made them a bit more, and I made the pots and baskets as well, and they were all over the stand. Flowers climbing over everything and up everything. He got his 30th gold medal, and he's given me a little gold medal as well. So I've now got a certificate saying I got a gold medal at Chelsea, which bit tongue-in-cheek, but I'm quite chuffed with that one. So basically, you put the ribs in, you start doing a bit of what I would call basket weave. You just weave two rods, one in, one out all the time, twisting them. And then once we've been round a little way, we come out and we start to make a proper twist. And once you start this rope-like twist with the willow, it's a continuous twist that goes round and round the pot right to the end. You don't stop and start. So put that one there. As you work it round, so I'll put it that way, that's the way I work. It might be easier to turn around and you can see it. But basically the twist carries around, and as we come out from just two bits of willow each side, I build up to put 3 or 4 each side, and that twist is continuous. At the same time, we introduce extra ribs because you're getting bigger, so you've got to have the same space. The twist is always done just one twist and put a rib in, and then where you want the extra rib, that's where the spike comes in, because you basically push it in between there, open up and introduce another rib. And the next time it works into the twist. And where possible, we try and add the ribs all on the same rib. So that one, and back there are all together. That way you keep a pretty good shape. But every pot varies. It's I can't work with this one because it's all bone dry now, but you would literally keep twisting in that position and turning the pot all the time until you've finished basically. and you end up with one like that. The only difference being that all the rest of the end of the ribs are standing up around. Lay 4 main crossbars in, then the ribs are folded in and woven in between. Extra wood is added all the time because if this is a pot to go down in the sea, it needs a strong base. So the bigger the wood you can work in, the better. And that is the only time normally that I would use the fid. When I'm pushing these ribs in at the end and I can't get the middle ones through, I use that to push them into it and it slides them over into place. And so when all that is done, 3 or 4 stones would be tied in and around the bottom, ballast to weigh it down. A rope would be put coming off that twist in a loop, and then your main line would come down to it. Normally the pots were put down in strings of about 7. The problem is nowadays, the old fishermen would have fished probably 24 pots like this, but 3 strings of 7 and the 2 or 3 odd ones in shore. Nowadays, a fisherman needs to work a few hundred pots a day. He's got a high performance winch on the boat, which they didn't have then, and these pots were just getting smashed to pieces because they're hooked in the bottom. As soon as the winch pulls on them, they just disintegrate. So back in about 1960 something, suddenly probably within 3 or 4 years, everyone was using these pots, and then nobody was because they just couldn't keep up with modern fishing. And that was the end of the willow pot. That's about when I started making them. Purely as a hobby. I had a little boat. I made a couple of pots for myself, and an old great uncle of mine basically taught me. Well, I watched him making his and I just had a go at it and carried on making my own. Since then, National Trust have asked me to demonstrate it each year at what is known locally as the Vietnam Marché. It's the old market. It's like a Victorian market. Everybody comes along in costume. It's quite a big thing locally. We get about 7,000 people there on the night, and from an island population of just over 60, I think it's a pretty good turnout. And they come and see all the old crafts being done. They see the people in the costumes. They have the local foods, bean jar and Guernsey gosh, Guernsey biscuits, and also quite large amounts of Guernsey cider. It makes a great evening. When I started doing this for them, I never actually realised that 50 some odd years later, I'd still be there doing it. And that's why I'm here now. Right, making a Guernsey crab pot. We need some ribs. All this is black mould willow. 5 foot there for the twist, what I call the twist, and 7 foot long for the ribs. It's just the natural one in the bark arm. Basically, we have to sharpen the ribs, and they need a long point. The point's got to get well deep into the mould, just to show you, because sometimes people just sharpen them like a pencil and they don't actually fit very well. So you want a long start like that. Luckily the rest of them are done earlier, so you're not going to have to watch me do the lot. It's a good idea to get a bit of a shape into the rib, so I just focus them around the knee a couple of times. Well, the first part is basically quite straightforward. It's a case of putting all the ribs into the right size ring and start the pot. The origin of the pots is, well, probably unknown. I think as long as man has used willow to make baskets originally and moved around, he's probably started making things to catch food in, and slowly the pots have evolved. I think the big difference is, in a way, they seem to evolve differently, even different parts of the UK, different parts. Well, I think everyone's got their own style of pot, but looking at the other styles in England, they seem to be a little bit different to ours. And it's probably partly due because here on the island, we're in a quite a large tidal range, 10 metres on the big spring tides. That means, if you think of it logically, about a person's height of water moving every hour in the sea, which is a lot of water. So it actually means there's a lot of currents around here. So our sort of pot has got to be able to stay in its place on the bottom. And I think for that it's supposed to be made slightly flatter, slightly wider. From what I've seen of the English make, they look a little bit more ball shaped, which is probably practical for that part of the country. Right, we've got the ribs in place, so I always try and use the twist as a balanced willow, in that I always try to keep two bits about the same size. So I start one and then I start the next one, and then each one goes over the one before, in effect. So you're just making a normal basket work with a bit of a twist in it. It actually takes about three to 4 hours to make a pot. And the thing with willow, it can be used fresh and green, for making the pots it's very convenient to do it that way, because they're going to be wet again to go in the water, so any shrinkage doesn't matter. But to soak them, it's a sort of a rule of thumb that roughly 1 day per foot you soak this type of willow. So the 7 foot has been in my soaking trough for 7 days, and the 5 foot has been in for 5 days, and then it's been wrapped up in a sack and mellowing for a couple of days after that to be more workable. I mean, when these were in their prime, should we say, the local fishermen would have had a sailing boat, or possibly even just a rowing boat. Engines weren't in effect invented at that time, so they relied on the tides and everything to take them where they wanted, so it was very hard work. You didn't just motor out towards your pots in the sea. You had to know how to sail. You had to go up, probably sail quite a ways away from them, and then come back on another tack and line up with the bobbers. And when you did get to the pots, you had to lift them by hand. There was no mechanical aids in those days. So lifting a few pots, a string of 7 pots on a long length of rope, was very hard work. Bearing in mind you're in a boat that's bobbing around, it's not on a flat level surface. You've got probably quite a bit of wind and the tide against you. It was hard work for those people. I know some of the early boats that were in the bays around here, around the island. I think in about 1920s, probably one of the first boats actually appeared in the bay with a motor in it. I mean, this, to all the other fishermen, this was just an amazing feat to see something else to propel the boat. And I don't know how long after that, but it doesn't take people long to sort of think about things, and they realise by using an old axle from a car they could make a capstan type winch up towards the bow of the boat, which was then going to be able to help them to lift the pots on board. You wind the rope around the winch a few times and it would take the load and pull. Not that efficiently, but it would work. But it still meant that if the pots were hooking, the fisherman could slacken the rope off and with care get his pots up. And it was probably about early 1960s a new type of winch evolved, basically known as a slave. Instead of winding the rope around a capstan head, it was almost like two dinner plates back to back, and the rope just went in a groove between them. These winches were hydraulically run. It meant you could just flick a lever and stop and start. It meant a lot more safety, because the old type of winch really was very dangerous. I still know quite a few people with fingers missing or even hands missing that would have got caught in the old winch. So the new one was a blessing all round, really. The one problem was they were much stronger, and if you were lifting willow pots and the pot was hooked, the winch didn't realise it and it would just rip the side of the pot out and you'd just get a little piece of willow back. And I think within those few years, mid-60s, basically the willow pot died a death, as it were, because it suddenly was no longer practical. The next stage is just to put a cord or something around these pieces to make sure they don't drop off the end of the ribs when the pot is finished. You could use wire, you could use anything really for this. In fact, my old great uncle that I learnt from, if he ever saw the telephone people repairing the telephone wires at a mast, he'd go and beg all the old bits of copper wire off them to tie his pots together. Now, the next stage really is to start the twist cord proper. So I start just lifting the willow up a little bit, have a gap, again a couple of matching willows, possibly not too thick if I can, and I just tuck one in, twist it round, it's just come out, just leave it there, take it round the next one, and then put the second one in. I'm basically twisting 2 willows each side now to make the shape. In fact, though it's the same design, same method, so many, there are different types and shapes of pot that were used over here. This would have been a sort of a general purpose pot that would have caught shanker, which is what we call the brown crab, crayfish and spider crabs. Lobsters wouldn't be caught so much in the pot like this because the neck's too big and too shallow. For a lobster pot, you would make this neck probably a couple of inches narrower, and also, like I'm doing now, it would be made quite a bit deeper, so it went deeper down into the bottom of the pot, because then it seemed it held the lobster down. It's all the time, it's one twist, bring in the rib, and then another twist for the next one. Put the rib in, put the twist in there, take the rest of the wood round, and then a little kink on it, and you bring the twist in as well. Because we put one side, we put one the other side as well to down like that. Right, we've got a bit of neck done there, and goes down. Next stage is starting to shape the pot itself. I think this again is where it's slightly different to the other models. That's on the peg. Down, and I'll bring around 3 or 4 at a time to make my shape. I think the worst thing with this, trying to explain it to people having a go, newcomers, is that the hardest part is probably the beginning. This part and the next few minutes going around, getting in a lot of ribs, adding in the extra twist and doing it all together and trying to keep it balanced. When the old people, I keep talking about the old people, but my ancestors that were making these, I think what would happen, any young apprentice would basically finish the pot, the last twist or 2 round, and as he got a bit better, he'd start a bit earlier each time. But doing this and teaching it now, we've got to start at the beginning. So basically, we're going to put a rib in. It's a bit dark for you to see there. If I just show, look, put the splice in, I'll open up the twist, then put a rib in that hole. Then I'll sit down and twist it. I'll make the next twist, and then this one takes the rib into place. And normally, for now, I just pass it through if I can. I didn't bend this one to shape it. Pass it through under the others, and it's kinked a little bit, we will do there. Then we carry on to the next rib, and already I can see I'm pulling that rib back, so I really need another one by that one to make the keep the shape going well. So what I'm going to do is just bend a few more on my knee to have the, with a bit of a curve in, they actually fit into place better. I haven't used the spike this time because I can see there's enough gap just to get that rib in. So down there, twist him in. But at the same time, I'm thinking the twist is getting a bit on the thin side, so I've got to keep adding that as well. The difficult part with these pots, or the worst part shall I say, the most difficult bits are when you're starting and doing this section around the neck and you're trying to get in a lot of ribs, and we don't add them in as other places do in handfuls, in groups, and then spread them out. We put them in one at a time as we need them. Why? I don't know. Again, it's just the way it's evolved, I think. So there's another one going in there. Get rid of him for now. Just working my way around, getting it all back into shape because some of the woods were coming loose. It's something I normally do probably half a dozen times in making it till we get far enough round that it'll hold its own shape. But I know on a mould it would probably be time down to your framework. Be a bit different, but it's the way I've always been used to working, and at least I can sit down on the job comfortably. And my little warm slab of insulation, which makes a big difference underneath. Nearly round. That's the last one, I think. Well, whilst I'm working around there, I'll tell you all a little story. And it was all about the old chap that taught me to make the pots, old Wilfred Gaudion. He had a very good mate, another old pensioner, Arthur Gaudion, and they used to go out fishing together in Arthur's little boat. I never, he very rarely came with me, but only on one occasion he was coming out with me fishing, and he was, I suppose in his own way, a bit of a comedian really. And we're down in our little punt in the little dinghy to row out to the, hello Zala, you come to see me? Hey? So we're rowing out, and Wilfred all the time he's looking over the side of the boat at the well, into the sea, and he used to make a bit of a thing of things sometimes, and you know, pull your leg. I let him on. I didn't let on for a couple of minutes, and then eventually I said to him, "Well, what are you looking for?" And he said, "Arthur's watch." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Arthur lost his watch last time we were out." But I said, "That's a fortnight." I said, "We've had quite a few gales since then. It's been lousy weather." So we get in the big in the proper boat then, and out we go and start. We went lining for what we call pollock, what we call whiting. I mean, you know them all as pollock. And every now and then he's looking over the side of the boat and really laying it on a bit. And I said, "You're not still looking for the watch? I mean, we're about 100 feet of water then." And so, yeah, he said, "You know, it might be down there." So carried on. It became sort of the joke of the day, I suppose, in the boat. And anyway, we caught enough fish for what we wanted, and he said to me, can we do his crab pots on the way home? Because he had a few willow pots out like this that he'd made. So I said, "Yeah, that's no problem." And I said, "We got enough fish. You can take a few heads off, and you've got some bait for the pots." So everyone's happy. Like, there won't be anything in them. I said, "It's a fortnight since we've done them, so any crabs in will be gone again." So being the youngster on the boat, I had the happy task of lifting the pots. I didn't have a winch on the boat or anything like that. So I'm there hauling away on the ropes, and as the pot comes up by the side of the boat, I leant over, grabbed, and I said, "There's Arthur's watch, now then we'll look after it this time." And amazingly, the watch had snapped on a pin by the watch. And it must have been as he threw the pot over the side, it came off. It was still buckled up together, and it was hanging on the twist, just dangling in the pot like that. And well, I couldn't believe it really either, but when we came ashore, it was so funny really, because normally he'd have helped me get the box of fish up from the boat up. I'd hardly got the boat by the jetty to unload the fish. He was gone ashore. He could see Arthur's car at the top of the beach, and he was running up saying, "It's all right, I found it, we got your watch." And amazingly, they took it back to the repairer then, and got it going again. I've told it to quite a few people, and most of them don't, I think, believe the story, but it is a true story. I just couldn't get over how it happened. Now, as you can probably see, we're sort of coming round to the top of the pot. The working is actually getting easier because the ribs are more or less where we want them. I'm still putting more in. I'm still going to get a bit bigger as we go round, but not as many as we were putting in the original neck. And in general terms, it does start actually getting easier to work. All the time adding into the twist. I'm trying to keep it regular. Another rib now. Push a hole in the twist. Follow it up with the rib. If I can see enough gap in the twist like that, I don't need to use the spike every time. Seems to me I'm going to have a dip there, so I'll put another rib in there just to pick it up a little bit, expand it a bit. Go in. Wrong wood. That's over there. I often tend to over twist slightly to get a bit tight, and then it goes back in place when you put the next rib in. Right, well we're coming around the shoulder of the pot now, so I would think of it, and starting down the sides. So it's basically a case of just carrying on as normal, adding in the wood as I want it. Putting the wood in, mightn't show well from there, but I put it under the rib and hold it in the twist and just leave it there. Do the next twist and then you pull the willow in and it kinks and bites nicely in position. So it's literally, lay it on the hand but underneath the rib, there. I'm still adding a few ribs as we go. This point here, again, it doesn't show that well. You can see there's quite a gap in the ribs, and if I pull that right back, it's going to be a bit, to me, too much. So I'll add another rib in there. But I've only got a few more ribs ready sharpened, and I've probably got enough there to finish the pot, or very close. So I won't put many more in. To make a really strong pot, if you've got your twist fairly close like this, it does make it stronger. As I understood it, in the days when they were being used, there were some people that actually made the pots on what they call piecework. It's so much a pot, but if they went too wide on the twist here and too open, then sometimes the fishermen would refuse to take the pot. They would insist on not just 2.5 to 3 twists round, it would have to be 4 levels to the bottom, purely because it would make a weak pot, and some of the smaller brown crab that can probably escape through the gaps. So though they were doing it piecework, there were sort of limitations or rules, should we say, to follow to do it properly. I'm getting to a point where the willow is tied together and it's almost making it harder to get my hand in and around. But really soon I can undo the strings and let everything go. One more rib there. So the next bit of twist goes under the rib, holds again on my breast on my hand, and then twist. Then you pull it in place. That's one in. I've got to put another one to balance it. When it's all done and we give it a haircut, it'll look totally different. Now we still see a spot there. This is going to want one more rib in. Quite often the ribs now on, we would have probably used what was known locally as seep, but you probably all know as tamarisk. It's a harder wood. It doesn't bend so well as willow, but it makes a good foundation to the pot, and it gives it more strength around the lower sides. That would be cut off the local hedgerows. It's one of the woods that grows well by the sea. It can take the salt air. I think that's the place that hurts most on the hand, because you're all the time using that part of the hand to link the willow in, and when I'm twisting like this, that's the locking position to keep it all in its place. And I'm starting to feel it there now. Them in a bit quicker, but it just feels a bit thin on the hand to me. This is the easier bit. It's still hard work. It's no easier on the hands, but it's a bit better just working around without adding. In fact, the best thing at the moment is going to be to take all these pieces off. That's why we just make a slip knot there when we're doing it, otherwise it'd be an hour unclimbable. Take the peg out and back to work. Makes it a little bit easier because the woods aren't being trapped in together now. As I said at the start, it's one twist between each rib. You don't get a wide gap like that and think I'll do an extra twist to close the gap. It would be too wide, too far apart. Wouldn't be right. Twist there to balance it up. I suppose the main thing is making sure you can get these twists as tight as possible. It's the tighter you go and the closer the ribs are and the stronger. Sometimes I notice with people learning they tend to wind the willow round, but not to actually tug it into where it should be, because I'm pushing the rib up into the twist each time with my left hand there and wrapping it round as tight as possible. And you can see there that suddenly this side is stronger than the other side, and I'm getting an uneven looking twist, so this bit sticks out more, I would wear quicker. So I'm actually going to just go back one. Put a twist in from there. That one. Not at the best there, but it's not bad. If it was going in the sea, the crabs would accept that one. We're at the point where if I do that, put it in that position and using a straightish stick, it gives me an idea where the bottom's going to be in relation to the neck, and I would say I'm about right. So I've got to carry on twisting probably around to where the end of the stick is, slowly getting closer and closer to the twist before, so it feathers out to nothing. The plan is to try and have a pretty flat ring that if you sight it in like that, or if you're sighting from that end, at the moment you can see it sort of, this side is coming up, so I'm going to just run it down and feather it out, and we'll be there then. I feathered it down to the row of twist before, and basically that's the finish of the twist. I think I'm looking at the side of it, the line of it. It's not too bad. You want to get it as level as possible, but I can tap it around a little bit and line it up. So yeah, that's rubbish. And then we're gonna get the plate out. So shows you how well attached it was, which is important. Now the bit everyone else seems to find funny, I have to go in the pot to do all the trimming inside. I've just grabbed some thicker bars to do across the base, the ribs. I should just place them for the moment. That one's a bit shorter for the side. Get it. It's basically a case of, again, by eye positioning them so they're all about equal. Do. They've got to be tied in position, so bear with me. Right, that's the last one in place. Right. Now, firstly, they're not cut too long because everything on the bottom is left sticking out, because by the end of a season in the sea, these ends will have worn away basically practically to the pot. If you cut them close, they'll wear it in no time. They'll wear the edge of the pot out, the bottom will come away and the pot's ruined. I think I mentioned at the beginning the size tides. We've got your 10-metre tides, and along with that comes very strong currents that it does push a lot more wear and tear on the pots than probably some of the other areas where they're fishing in little closing coves and corners which haven't got a lot of tide. My other problem at the moment is I haven't got any extra wood to make the bottom. There's some cut, I know, some in one place, and I was going to collect it, but I haven't had a chance yet. So I'm going to just finish the bottom with the ribs, and I can show you on one of the other pots where we put the extra in. Basically, the more wood you can fit in the bottom, the stronger the pot is, and the thicker the wood also, the stronger it is. And this is probably the one time normally when I will be using the fizz. Right, now we're back a couple of days later actually, because the pot I was making, I've actually finished it. I've managed to get hold of some willow. It's not good quality working willow, but it's sufficient to do the bottom. So I've got the other pot just over there with the bottom worked in, but the way I'd done it, I didn't do it properly. I've had to just thread each extra wood through. So in the meantime, Claire's had a go herself, and she's actually produced a really good attempt at a pot. In fact, I'm very impressed actually. And she suggested it'd be better if I put the bottom on in this one instead, so we can show you the procedure. So without further ado, basically I start by turning a couple of woods at a time, take them across these are drying out slightly, but I think they're going to work okay. Couple. I mean, I could use more ribs to do the bottom. It would look quite good actually, but we have a problem over here. Getting the materials here is very expensive. We have to pay a double shipping rate to ship it to the shipper and then to ship it across to the island. So I tried to save the good wood for the important work, and we managed like this with the rest. I'm going to trim these all off what looks over length, but as I think I mentioned, they wear down over a season. So I've got 2 or 3 pieces there that's long enough. I can use those again just by coming under there together, over, under, over and out. That way. Once they're fitting nice and tight, we just keep folding them in like this. Now it's starting to get a bit of a gap, so then I will start using some of the other wood that I've collected. And these are quite long lengths, so I'm going to turn it round, start from the good end. So where am I going? It's a good idea to get under the twist. Work these heavier ones in like this, into place. Whilst there's room to move. Same time I can do another one. Bring it back round under there. So I'm sure you can now see the way the technique goes. I can actually get a third one of them in a minute, but that one's next now. And that one. Best way is once we've got one side started, is to keep it balanced by doing the other side. I don't think we can change that shape much. A little So those two are on. This, in fact, is probably one of the major differences to the mainland pots, shall we say, as opposed to the Guernsey pot. Slightly stronger. They should have gone over a bit more. So the fraction wrong would be a bit cheeky. Nice. Nice one. Right, this could be the last one, I think, in here. Go in there. Oh, I don't want to go in there. Because in there is going the wrong way. Won't thread very well with the fork on the end, do you? Oh, fit. Well, I think there's enough there. I could put one or two more first. going to put it out in deep water somewhere, but of course that's not bad. Now you're going to see your pot properly for the first time today. Lovely. I won't stand on yours to test it, just in case. There you go. A nice pot.